Hi guys, Samantha from Jessama Tutorials here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to create a beach themed necklace with a faux opal inside. So we're going to start out by creating our faux opal. So you're going to need some translucent powder rolled out on the thickest setting of your pasta machine. Here is the powder that I am using, and if you're looking for this in the US you can get it at Linda's Art Spot. She carries a whole bunch of them and they're really nice and fresh. So that is where you can get your translucent powder from. You're also going to need some sort of opal flakes. Any blue version will do, so here are some examples of that. And I carry a whole bunch on my shop, and we're actually going to be doing a mixture of these. So I'll provide links to those in the description below the video, but any opal flakes that are blue will work. Okay. So I've got this rolled out on the thickest setting, and it doesn't matter if it's a little bit dirty. And we're going to take our opal flakes, and I'm going to pour a bit in there. And then you want to fold this over. And this can be a little bit tricky. You want to do this by hand to start with, and then you can start putting it through your pasta machine because it can scratch your pasta machine if you're not careful. And it also just crumbles all over the place, so it's just easier if you use your acrylic roller to do this. And so this first one, I'm using just these kind of light green ones. They appear white, they appear pink on the white at the moment, but once the translucent goes translucent in the oven, they'll take on a more almost sea green colour. And you're just going to want to carry on folding it over and over, picking off these opal flakes, scraping any that might be sticking to your tile, and just working them in. And then once you've got them somewhat worked in, like I have now, where it's not crumbling all over the place, you can start running it through your pasta machine to get them mixed in. Okay, and that's what we have so far. And I know it doesn't look nice right at the moment, but it means it's really dependent on how many opal flakes you add. The more you add, the better this will look. Okay, so we've got some beautiful blues there. And I'm actually going to start out by rolling this on the clay to get some of them stuck. And just continue adding until you can see that it's starting to take on an opal-like effect. Okay, so here is what we want at the end of this. I decided towards the end that I didn't want to add these, so I've just added these two together to create a really nice dark blue opal-like effect. And now it's not going to look like opal yet, just because the translucent has not cured yet. So what I want to do is I'm going to lift this up. And now I don't tend to run this through a pasta machine just because it's going to fall apart and it's going to clog up your machine and scratch rollers and things like that, so I tend to just condition it by hand. So I'm just going to take a bit, and I have a nice cabochon mold here, and I'm just going to press this together. And now this opal is not going to be very strong when baked just because it contains so much other stuff other than the clay. So if you're using this technique, I highly recommend, if you're going to use it on its own without a cabochon, then roll it out as thin as you can get it and put it onto a backing of some kind, a fairly thick backing. Or as we're doing now, put it into a cabochon and have other clay around it that is going to add strength. Because it's strong, I mean the brand that I'm using is very nice and strong, but just because we've got so many little opal flakes in there, it's not going to be as strong as it should be. Okay, so now that I had that all pressed together, we're going to pop this into the mold. And also because of all this inclusions, we're not going to be sanding it or anything fancy like that. We're just basically going to leave it the way it is and possibly add some resin over the top of it later to smooth it out. But you can't expect it to be a really smooth finish just because of all of those inclusions. Okay, so I'm really pressing that down into that mold, making sure that we get it as smooth as we possibly can, because that mold will smooth it out fairly well. And we should be able to see from the front how that's looking. Yep. Okay, and then I'm just going to take a blade, and I want to be careful because you can cut your mold. You just very lightly want to run this over the surface, and it's going to be harder to cut than usual because of all the inclusions in there, so just be careful. Okay, and I'm going to move my finger out the way there. Okay, and I've just removed most of the excess. It doesn't look nice and clean, so don't worry about that. We're going to go in with our roller again, and we're going to smooth that down. Okay, there we go. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop this into the freezer for about 15 minutes just to get it to cool off, so that when we take it out of the mold it will hold its shape really well. So just before you pop it in the mold, make sure that you're happy with it. Check the front. We can't see through it completely clearly, but you can see whether there are cracks or things like that in there. So just check that. And I'm going to pop that in the freezer for 15 minutes to cool it off, so that when we remove it from the mold it will stay in shape. Now you could put this in the oven if you want, but I find that you have very microscopic air bubbles in here, so if you pop it in the oven, those air bubbles are going to want to come up through the mold, and so you're not going to get a very smooth finish. So although these are oven safe, these molds that I do make, I don't typically put them in the oven unless I have liquid clay inside them, because I find that you get a more imperfect finish than if you had demolded it before putting it in the oven. Okay, and here is our cabochon, and I'm just going to quickly demold that, and it should come out, and you can see we've got a fairly smooth finish because of the shine on that mold, so that looks really nice. Okay, and now ordinarily if I had little bits and pieces along the side like I do over here, you're always going to have tiny little bits and pieces on the side. Ordinarily I would trim those up, but you don't have to trim them up today because we're going to not be using the entirety of this cabochon. We're going to be covering up a little bit with some other more organic effects, so there's no need to really trim them up. You can just pop this straight in the oven as it is. I typically bake for around, let's see, about half an hour, because we are going to be putting this in for a second bake for a full hour. So I just bake it for half an hour just to give it enough strength that we can manipulate it. And you will bake it at Pardo's recommended temperature. And I typically, if this is the only bake I'm going to be doing, I bake it for more than half an hour, as you can see here. Polymer clay, so long as you're baking it at the right temperature that the brand is recommending, so long as you bake it at that temperature, you can typically bake it for as many times and as long as you want. Just check it regularly. If it looks like it's yellowing, you can turn down the temperature just a touch, but typically I've baked some pieces for up to 3 hours in the oven and they turn out just fine. So don't worry about that time thing. Typically you can bake it for much more than that. So I'm just going to pick this up gently with my blade. I don't want to be handling it with my fingers. I want to keep that beautiful shiny finish. And I'm just going to pop it on this piece of plain printing paper, and I'll pop this in the oven for half an hour. Alright, so these are finished baking, and I've done some extra ones here, so you can see, but here's what our original one looks like. And they look absolutely great. Now they are going to be incorporated into something, so on their own they don't really look like opals, but when we incorporate them you'll see that they look absolutely stunning. Hopefully you can see the colour shift there, it really is nice. Now because these are made out of powder, we do want to give them a little bit of a clean, because when they come out of the oven they're going to have this kind of beeswax that has floated to the top of the cabochons. So just take some alcohol, any strength is okay so long as it's over 40%. Give them a spray, and you can see how beautiful those become when you spray them. That's what's going to happen when we put the resin on them. Just take a wet wipe and just give it a rub, and that will help remove that wax. And I'll do these ones as well, but this is the one that we're going to be using in our project. So just make sure you give it a really good rub off, and that is just going to remove any wax that you might have on it. Okay, so I'm going to put these off to the side and we're going to get started on our pendant. So you're going to need some ecru clay mixed with white. It is equal parts white, equal parts ecru, primer. And I've just got this rolled out on the thickest setting of my pasta machine. Okay, like so. Okay, and now you can either use this scattered shell stamp that I have, or if you can get hold of real shells, it will be better. So I've got some shells here, and I've also just got some urchin fragments over here. So you can choose to use a shell stamp or real shells. Personally, I find real shells work for this best. And just take them and press them into the polymer clay. And now I'm going to be using a rectangle cutter, so I'm just going to give it a very light imprint so that I know where I'm working. And then I'm also going to take the cabochon, and this is kind of a rough estimate, and I'm just going to pop that there so that it gives me an area to avoid so that I don't waste time pressing shells into places where I just don't need them. So just take any assortment of shells that you might have, and they're going to break when you do this. I mean, it's putting pressure on them, but that's fine. That's why having the fragments is cool. So you're just going to go around and press them in, and I'll just continue through my assorted different shells. You don't even need to press the whole lot of the shell in. You can kind of roll it around and play around. Like so. Then I want you to take some black paint, and this is the brand that I am using. Okay, open it up. I'm just going to plop a bit in the middle, and I'm just going to use a brush to spread it out and work it into all those gaps, because we want to antique this. And the reason I'm antiquing it now rather than later when we bake it is because we are going to be putting stuff over the top of this, so antiquing it later is going to be pretty hard, so I'm doing that now. And you'll understand and see what I mean when I'm a little bit further in the process. So just make sure that you get that paint in everywhere. Don't want any little spots left. And then brush continually, because you want to work big puddles of paint out of the way. And then I'm just going to bring over a wet wipe, and every once in a while I'm just going to brush over and then brush my brush over it. And that way I'll thin away the paint, but I'll still get a nice even cover. And then that will pave the way for me to start removing it with a wet wipe. But right now we need to make sure that we remove a good percentage of that paint. So just really go in there and get rid of it, and we're almost finished with that. Okay, just clean off the brush, bring over a different wet wipe. And this one we're just going to place over the top, and we're just going to smooth like so. Not pressing hard, we're just pressing enough that the paint will get absorbed pretty much into the wet wipe, so that we remove a good majority of it. And then go over with another one and just be a little bit more specific on where you rub off the paint. We really do want to get rid of most of it. Okay, now if it's giving you a bit of trouble and doesn't want to come off, you can always spray some alcohol on here, which I'm going to do. And you can see what a big difference that makes. We don't want to be spraying too much alcohol because it dries out the clay, but a little bit to get that stuff removed. So long as we remove that alcohol very quickly, it should be fine. Right, and I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm just going to pop that off to the side so that it can dry. Clean up your tile so there's no more paint left. And then take the same colour that you are working with, that ecru, and I want you to put it into an extruder. And I have this extruder right here, and I've got the smallest rounds that I can possibly achieve. And I'm just going to start extruding it, like so. Okay. And we don't need very long pieces, so that is almost long enough. Okay. There we go. That's all we need. Pop that off to the side. And we'll use that in a little while. By now this should have pretty much dried enough for us to move on to the next step. The next step is going to be to first pop our rectangle down so that we can see roughly what we need, and then trim away a good amount of that excess, like so. We've got still plenty of space to cut out, but now we've got a fair amount of clay back. So we want to take that and we want to roll that into a sheet of polymer clay. And we want this one to be at about 0.8 millimeters thick. And it doesn't matter if it's a little dirty because there was a bit of paint on there. All we want to do is we just want to take it and our opal. I just want to press down around it. And I'm just going to use a piercing pin to just kind of roughly mark out the amount of clay that we're going to need. It does not need to be neat because we'll worry about that later. Okay, and then you want to mark this whole thing with shells as well. Okay, and so I textured it with shells and I also antiqued it. So then what we're going to do is we can take this, our cabochon, I'm going to position it there. And I'm not gonna, I might actually put some liquid clay on. I think we probably should. I've got some Kato translucent liquid clay here. Just gonna apply a tiny amount onto the back. We don't need that much, because we're gonna be securing it in other ways. So just place that on there, give it a little bit of a push. Then take this, place it over the top, and I want you to tuck it pretty tight. Try to avoid getting any air bubbles. You might be thinking, why did you cover it? Don't worry, we are going to cut out a little hole. First what we need to do is we just want to use this piercing pin to just gently tuck this in properly so that it is well stuck. Right, then you're going to need a craft knife, and we're going to do this very carefully. And make sure you ripple these sides. And I'm going to try and go smaller than what I think I'm going to want, because you can always go larger, but going smaller is a bit harder. Okay, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to reveal the opal like that. So I might actually pop this onto a piece of paper to work with, because I want to be able to see it from all angles. So let me just bring over a piece of printing paper. This means that I can look at it, and this side is a little bit flat my liking, and it also is a little bit shallow. So I'm going to just give it a quick dip and around. There we are. You could dip a little bit more here, because I want to give it a really nice organic edge. And this side I would like to do that too. There we go. So there's like just being exposed. It's like one of those things that you find at the beach. It's just like, oh, so nice to find. Okay, and so you can play with that as much as you want. And what we're going to do is we're just gently going to take that now. We're just going to press around those edges just to kind of round it off a little bit, and so that you can't see that really sharp edge. I'm not pressing really hard, I'm just pressing forward. So that we still have a dip in the rock, so that we've definitely got a ridge, but it's just not so obvious. Okay. Just going to get this into the center now. Okay, and I just made a quick mark so that I know somewhat where the center is. Now we're going to take these, and I just want you to take them and lay them down across here, and then break them off at the edge, and maybe lay another one over, and then you're going to overlap them. So I'll just show you a few here how to do it. So just continue overlapping them, and what you want to do is you want to leave this around the edge here. So you want to go up as close as you can, but you don't want to go so close that you start going up the cabochon. That's quite important. And then when you've got an initial layer like that, you can take this, stick it down, and then kind of move it around so that it's not just going straight across your piece. And just play around with that. Something you could also do if you're struggling with that is you could also, let's see, take these, and I'm just going to lay them down like so, and you can just make a sheet of them essentially, overlapping and things like that, and that way you don't need to worry about squishing them down yet. You can just kind of overlap and play with it, and then we will add it to the cabochon, which I think is what I want to do. Okay, and so here is the nest of pieces that I have. And so what we're going to do is, when you're doing this, you just want to take your cutter, and I'm using the largest rectangle cutter in my rectangle set, and you just want to make sure that the main body of that fits the cutter. Then take a piece of plain printing paper and just press down. You don't want to be pressing really hard, you just want to press down enough that all those pieces are going to stick together. You don't want it so that you're burnishing it flat though. We want to keep that dimension. Okay, there we are. Now if you mess it up, you can always just go back, pop that in the extruder, and try again. You're just picking it up off that tile because it's quite thin and quite delicate. And okay, so it does fit. So what I want to do is I want to mark out where I need to take this off. So I'm just going to pop it over here, and I'm not going to do anything rash. I'm just going to give myself little pointers as to where I need to trim. Okay, and then I'm just going to use my blade and move that out of the way because I don't want to do anything crazy. We want to take our blade. Let's see, there's a little pointer here. So I want to come up, up. And I'm not going to be too precise, we're not trying to get an exact rectangle out of this. Just trimming away this inside part. Okay. Trim that out pretty much. And that's actually quite a cute looking thing. Could use that in a different project. Okay, now this is going to be so fragile. Just going to stick it up against the piece here. Like so. Just going to bring this over to maneuver these so that they kind of stick up against it. Okay, and now I'm just going to bring over another piece. And this is going to create a very mild border. Now I might remove it, I might not like it. We'll see how it looks when I'm done working with it. And yeah, I don't think I like that. We'll leave it that way. It is, I quite like it as it is. Okay, so what we're just going to do is we're just going to gently go around and press all these edges because we've got quite a sharp edge on them at the moment. So you just want to gently press them down and get them to kind of go into the clay because it's still very soft. Okay. There we go. And we will be we might antique it or we might actually leave it the way it is, we'll see. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Now let's bring over our rectangle cutter and now I need to position this in the middle. Okay, and I've gone down one size. What I just want to do is I want to press enough that I can see where I need to cut. But I don't want to cut it out completely rectangular because we've gone for such a random effect so far. But I'm going to use my blade to kind of follow that line, but not really. Just follow it enough that it resembles a rectangular shape. Okay, when you're doing this, just be careful to hold it on the baked opal piece so that you're not squishing anything. Okay, I think I've chopped everything. And I can play around with it as I want. Don't like that edge, that needs to be a little bit more round. And I want to deliberately make it a little bit more scruffy because on some edges it kind of looks like it was supposed to be rectangular, but I didn't really use a symmetrical cutter. So I'm going to deliberately make some fairly deepish gouges in here. so that it looks purposefully organic. So when you're doing this, always cut it larger than what you're going to need. And you can really play around with it and have fun. And remember, again, if you mess this up by accident, you can always just bundle it back up into a ball, because initially this is all basically one color of clay, and the opal is baked, and this is why I baked it first, because there is a possibility of me overdoing it and that I would want to start it again, and that is why I baked my piece. And it also means it gives me somewhere to hold without squishing anything. Okay, now I'm going to look at that and see if there's any areas that look meh. So this corner I think needs to have a little divot in it, and I think it needs to just come around a bit. Okay, there we go. This needs to just trim up a little bit. And I'm going to mess around with it just a little bit more. Okay, and here's what I've ended up with in the end. Okay. And now we want to put a bail at the top. So you remember that piece that we cut out over here? And the little netting that we cut out from over here? We're going to be using both of those. So take this and take that netting and place it over the top. Then I want you to pick it up from the back, grab a knife, just trim. Like so. And then just press around it again, just to make sure that it is well stuck. Like so. Okay, then I'm just going to be using this. And we will wrap that around. Give it a press so that I know where to cut. And I'm going to try and get those two to meet without using that other thing yet. I can. There we go. Just very, very gently. Gonna press down on that, give it a little roll. And this is going to be our bail. Going to sit at the top here, and I think it might be a little large. If you think that it looks too large for your pendant, you can always go along that seam line with a blade, like so. And I'm just going to trim that a little bit more, and then we'll bring that together again. So let's see, how does that look? That looks better. And we're just going to be attaching that at the top, in the middle. Okay. Grab your pen and just roll on the inside so that you're squishing that down onto this. I'm actually just going to smooth it. You really want to make sure that it's well stuck down. Okay. There we are. And this corner needs to come in just a little bit more. You can always just manipulate it as much as you want. You can press along these edges to get them to move the way you want, because we're going for a really nice organic finish. Okay, alright, good to go with that. And now of course the back needs to be done, so we'll work on that in a little while. But for the moment I'm just going to pop that to the side, out of the way, and we're going to work on some of our extra little pieces. And so what we're going to be using are some cotton balls to create little pieces like this. And let's see, you're going to need some more of those extruded snakes. So I've got one here. And you're also going to need a cotton ball. And I'm using these. And I'm using the size 15. And now only one side is drilled, so what you're going to need is a skewer. Let me see, hiding behind my ruler. So just take that, you'll see it come through the other end, bring through the other way, and it can take a little bit of manipulating, and some of them give a little bit more trouble than others. Most of them come through pretty easily. Typically this one's giving me trouble, of course. There we go. Okay, and I just want to have them slide along my skewer nice and easily. Okay, so I'm just going to pop it on the skewer, like that. Then grab your snake, and what I recommend doing is always wrapping it around the top, so that it has something to hold on to, because it does not stick to the cotton and it does not stick to the skewer. Then wrap around the other end and press, like so. And then just wrap around, and each time you come to an overlap, press, just to get them to stick. Don't have to press very hard, but you do want to press. And the more you do that, the stronger it will be. And then I just go around basically until I'm happy with the number of gaps that I have filled. And I like to generally do it in one snake. And you can see it's separated over there. If that does do that, you can just go back in and lift that up, move that in, and then press so that they come back together again. Okay, and I'm almost done here. And now it's going to feel like it's floating on top of the cotton ball. That is what you want, because you don't want it to stick a lot to your cotton ball. And now I wasn't able to get everything in one piece, so you can just take another one, a shortish one, and just fill in any gaps that you feel need to be filled in. So it's just really that one down there that I felt needed to be filled in. And there's one more little bit. So you can take little tiny pieces. Where is it? Here we go. There we go. Alright, then just give it an overall good squish so that they're all kind of cemented together, and then grab another pin of some kind and gently use it to move this off of the skewer. And then you will bake it like that. And I've made 6 of these. So you want to make those. And then another one that you want to make are some cute little squiggle bits. So again, we're going to be using a skewer and wrap it around there, and you just want to create a little loophole like that, and then just wrap, just twist, and then come back, and if it breaks you can just squish it back on again and just continue going. And this is breaking because I did condition it, but it's very cold today, and so it's quite it's not as soft as it usually is. But don't worry, if it breaks, it really does not matter. And generally it breaks if I'm pulling a little too hard on it to keep the tension. There we are. When you're done, give them all a little bit of a squish and give it a little twist while you're squishing, and that will be enough to remove it from the skewer. And I'm probably going to make about 8 of those. And then we will tend to the back. Okay, so now that all of those are done, we are going to tend to our pendants back. So, going to grab these snaky bits, and I want you to just attach it. I just want you to wrap it around, but actually before we do that, we should probably impress it with shells. Now this can be a little difficult because we don't want to hurt the front, so position your fingers so that they are on your opal. Or you can even place it down actually, because that opal will hold it. You can see it's not squishing anything. And just impress the back with any shell you want, because we do want to have it looking basically the same as the front. So I'll do that, and then I'm also going to antique them, because we do want that as well. And here's how it looks. Now we're just going to take some pieces, and I actually might just do it off to the side here and just stick them on. I'm just going to take these leftover pieces that I have. I'm just going to kind of squish them all roughly together into this somewhat rectangular shape. Gently press on them just to get them stuck together. So, just want to take that, place that onto the back, and just give it a gentle press down, and then from the front we're going to trim roughly at first, but we'll come in now and we'll press it right up against this so that we don't have any little pieces peeking out. So when you look at it from the front, you shouldn't be able to see those pieces peeking out. Okay, and we could even take that and just gently press that up against the bail to give it some extra support. And now you can see it, we've got a little bit of paint here and along the edges. That's fine. The last bit that we need to do before we can pop this in the oven is we just need to grab some sandpaper and fix up the edges. So just grab that and gently texture these edges. You don't need a lot. Just need a little bit. I might even press it a little bit along the back to give it a little bit more of a grungy look, instead of antiquing it later, which I was thinking of doing, but I'm not sure if I want to do that. So I'm just gently taking it and just a little bit of sandpaper. And we'll probably clean up that paint up the top there in a little while, once it comes out of the oven. But there we go. And if you're not happy with the side still, you can actually go around with your roller and you can give it a very gentle roll to smooth out any cracks or things that you might have. But by now it should be pretty smoothed out, and it's got this really nice pattern on it due to some of the paint and just the general fiddling with it. Okay, now this has moved over a little bit for some reason, so I'm just going to gently press that along a little bit more. Okay, and then I'm going to pop this in the oven for a full hour at Primo's recommended temperature, because our powder is already pretty much baked. So that, and all of our little pieces here, they're all going to go on a piece of plain printing paper for a full hour at Primo's recommended temperature. And you want to have those on top of a ceramic tile so that the heat is in the oven is regulated, and then when they're done we can start assembling our necklace. Okay, and so everything is out of the oven. So here is our pendant, and it is still cooling off, and so you will see that it isn't completely clear yet. You want it to be completely cooled off before we put any resin on there, because that's what I want to do. And then we also have these little bits and pieces that we're going to antique. And then as for those pieces that have the cotton balls in them, those ones are actually in a sink of water, and I will leave them in there for about an hour so that the cotton will soften up so that we can actually pick it out to create our hollow beads. So first step is to pop these onto a skewer, like so. And then you're going to grab some black paint, give it a shake, same brand as before, and I'm just going to squeeze a little bit onto the tile. Now I've got a nice big brush. I'm just going to take a little bit, I don't want too much. And I'm going to brush over the surface and get into all those little cracks. That's number one. And you will repeat with every single one. Okay. And so the next step is going to be to take each of these and give it a pretty good clean. Just kind of rub it around in your hands, and you can also roll it across the surface until you end up with something kind of like that. You don't want to rub off too much, but you do want to rub off enough that it's pretty clean. And you'll repeat with all of them. Okay, and here they are all finished. So I'm just going to pop these off to the side, and we're now going to work with our pendants. You can put a matte varnish on this if you want. I'm pretty okay with it. I don't think it really needs a matte varnish. If it does, I'll add it later on. But for the moment, we want to add resin over here. So I'm going to be using this Chinese resin. Works pretty well. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to put some onto a brush. I don't want to put it directly on my piece because we want a very, very thin layer, and I don't want to be getting it on the rest of the project. And this allows me to control it. And this is a resin that does not dome. It's more of a it has a very similar consistency to nail polish, but is compatible with the clay. So just go and brush that around, and you'll see that it really brings that opal to life. And that is why I want to put the resin on. And we should only really need one coat. One coat should be enough, and I've just got the one little section down here that I need to do, and we should be just about done. So just make sure you got all of your edges. Okay, and then I'm going to pop that in the UV lamp for probably about half an hour just to make sure that it is completely cured. Okay, and the last thing to do now is these cotton balls, which have been soaking for quite a while. And now these do take a while, I will not deny it. You need to very slowly pick this cotton out, and the longer it's been sitting in the water, the easier it is to pick out. And now you don't want to be too rough with it. I like to pick from one area and then pick from another spot, and it can take up to an hour for me to do all of the ones that I have, but the result is really nice. And these are optional to the design. You don't have to do this. You can replace it with maybe some wood beads if you want, but I think they look quite nice. So really have a good dig at it, and don't pull, just almost like scrape it so that you're almost meshing it, and then clear out the rest. And I'll continue doing that. Okay, so here is what we have so far, and you can see they look really nice once they are hollow. And now I actually discovered a really cool trick. So just bear with me here, this might take a little while, but what I can get is actually get this to unravel. So I'm going in where the hole is, and I'm picking away at the thread in there. We've got to be very careful, and it's got to be nice and soft for you to do this. But what I want to do is I want to unravel this, because essentially this cotton ball is wrapped, so it can be unraveled. So here we go, we can see that we're getting that. There we are. Can you see that? It's been unraveled. And it speeds it up so much. So if you pick away at it just enough, and you've got to be gentle, don't do this in a rush, just gently pick away at the hole and just kind of try to pick up those threads, and it will definitely start to unravel for you. As you can see that it starts to unravel, but the key thing is that this needs to have been soaking in your water for probably around half an hour at least before it will start to do this. And keep in mind that it might not do it. If it doesn't do that, you need to go in from the other way and kind of start pushing it towards this hole again, so that you can just carry on picking at it. As you can see with this one, it takes a bit of maneuvering. But once you get it going, generally it will continue to go, and you can get a really quick and easy unravel. So we're almost done with this one as well. So I'll finish this up, and then we can move on to the next step, which is basically assembly. Okay, and here's the whole thing. So you can see how beautiful and shiny that is compared to the rest. So now we are ready for assembling. So I've got this beautiful neutral, almost latte colour suede, and this is what I'm going to be working with. And now first I want to figure out how this is going to look before I do anything permanent. I'm going to just pop that on that side and this on this side, and see whether that looks good or not. Yeah, I think that looks nice. Alright, so then I'm going to start with one of these, then I'm going to string on this, and we're going to go for 3 of these. And I love that they're hollow, they're just wonderful. And these used to take me about an hour to do a whole bunch like this, but after discovering that really cool effect just now, as you saw, this actually took me about 15 minutes to do, which is brilliant. So that's really cool. So that's something for you guys to play around with, because it means that you won't have to spend so much time, and it can be a more present technique in your designs, because I don't typically use them a lot just because they used to take me so much time, and now they will probably be being used a bit more. So this, you can see, is being threaded along quite quickly, and you might have a little bit of a challenge sometimes getting it through this hole here, because they are a little bit small. There we go. So you just need to have some patience. And now a key thing to remember is that if you don't cure your clay properly, these will fall apart when you try to take the cotton out of them. So if you want, you can make a test ball, or you can maybe put a test snake of clay in the oven, give it a bend and a squish when it comes out of the oven, and if it is flexible then you're good to go. If it snaps, these will snap when you're using them, so please check that before you go and put a whole lot of work into pulling the stuff out, because I've had that happen before and it really is disheartening and can cause a lot of irritation, which is never good. So anyway, that's just something to keep in mind. Now I'm going to finish off this end, and I'll finish off the other end likewise. I'm just going to take one of these little these cord ends, and I'm going to squish it shut. Okay. Then I'm just going to grab a jump ring. And you'll finish off the other end just the same, just you need to make sure that you have it at the right length for you. Okay, so you just take a jump ring and your 1/2 of the clasp and finish that off. Then measure how long you want this, and then you will do the same on the other end. Okay, and here is what it looks like, and I am super happy with how that turned out. It looks really nice. And remember, you can replace the opal with any other stone you want, but I just think the opal looks so nice in there. It's such a brilliant contrast to everything else. It has such a nice, beautiful, shiny, smooth finish versus all of the other more rustic, beachy, driftwoody sort of effects, and so I really like this project. So let me know what you thought in the comments below, and if you would like more complicated tutorials, please do check out my Patreon account. I have taught opal on there before, but it is a more complicated version called Boulder Opal, and you'll be able to access that if you sign up on the $15 level on Patreon. You'll also be able to get every single tutorial I have ever posted on there, which is close to 200 tutorials by now. So please do check that out, as that supports this channel so that I can post videos weekly. And also, if you're looking for the products that I have shown in this video, most of them I do supply on my Etsy store, Jessama Design, so please do consider checking that out. And again, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below and I will answer them as soon as I can. And as always, I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.